Body Shop connects you with the hottest fitness models in the world. Learn the backstage secrets that the most successful bikini divas, fitness models, and bodybuilders use to dominate the competition and land on the covers of magazines. Only here at the Body Shop will we allow you to listen and talk to the best of the best in fitness competitions. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Andre Brick St. Clair, and thank you for allowing us into your airways for the Body Shop. If you're passionate about bodybuilding and fitness, then you found a new home. All of us here at FTNS Radio would like to welcome you to the Body Shop. Our special guest today has been a champion bodybuilder, an endorsed athlete with EAS. He has a list of magazine covers and spreads, and now has his own personal training software, as well as he's also an accomplished company owner. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our guest to the Body Shop, Mr. Mike D'Angelo. Big Mike.
That was great. I am digging it.
Ah, man, what's going on, baby? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Ah, man, you know how I do, man. You know.
Killing it.
Ah, man, you know. I'm just trying to follow in your footsteps there, big man, you know?
Oh, yeah, thanks, pal. You're good. I'll pay you later.
Hey, listen, you know where to find me, man. You know where to find me.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Mike, man, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
All right, where exactly are you from right now?
I live just south of Boston.
Okay.
I grew up in Plymouth.
Mm-hmm.
And, I work in the city. I commute into the city. I used to live in the city up until about 3 months ago, but now I'm down doing the family thing, making it happen.
Okay. So when you say the family thing, is it like a new addition to the family, or, I mean, you know what's going on?
Yeah, I've got two step kids, and I got my own little boy from a previous marriage, and,
Okay.
We're all happy.
You know what, man? There's nothing wrong with that. But, okay.
I love it.
So with your busy lifestyle, prior to that, how exactly did you get into the whole lifting weights? Or, I mean, like, were you more so into trying to be a bodybuilder, or were you more so into trying to be like a fitness athlete?
I think when I first started, I definitely, went into this to, this was in high school, back, even actually when I first started lifting, I was 13. And that was just to put on muscle and try to gain strength for wrestling, and that's pretty much how it had started. And then I just, I just grew to really love the weights and love the whole process of training, and that's pretty much how it started.
Okay. So when you got into it, you was doing it more so for wrestling. But like,
that's originally how it started. That was again when I was like 13, 14 years old, and then once I graduated, from high school, the college I had gone to, they wanted me to join the wrestling team, but I couldn't do it because I was working full time.
Okay.
And so, I had to work full time. I was going to school full time, but I needed something to do physically.
Mm-hmm.
I had gone to school to study, exercise physiology. I was totally into the body. I was totally into the science of it, and that's why I chose the degree that I chose. And I became like my own little guinea pig, when it came to what was I learning in school. And then how can I apply that to myself in order to, like, put on muscle and get lean and that was it. And the first bodybuilding show I ever did, I was 19.
Okay. Well, since you're mentioning the first bodybuilding show that you did, explain to me the transition from when you started applying everything you was learning at school and getting away from wrestling. Like, how did you actually make the transition from wrestling, which is somebody that's not really eating, you're chewing gum, you're spitting, you're in the sauna, you're trying to drop weight.
Right.
How was that transition from doing that to actually stepping on stage and actually eating more meals?
I had been hitting the gym hard, and I was just working out for the sake of, putting on, muscle tissue. And I was doing it in a pretty balanced fashion from a standpoint of, trying to gain muscle everywhere. And I had this whole total body split thing going on where I'm doing these body parts one day and those another. And I just started putting on, muscle, and I was eating really clean, and I was really lean,
Mm-hmm.
And there were two, bodybuilders at the gym, that had done shows before, and they were like, dude, you have to compete. And I'm like, well, I was like a little guy. I'm only 5'6", and at that point I only weighed like 130 pounds, 135 pounds, something like that. And they're like, you have to compete, you'll, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'd love it. All right, so game on. And so me and one of, my training partner, this guy Jason, we decided that we were going to do our first show. We got a little bit of help from this trainer, Jimmy DeSisto, and he basically was like, "Hey, this is what you got to do." He showed us a little bit about posing, and I mean that was how it got started, and it was a fun process.
Okay, so now during your first competition, how did you place?
Geez, I think my first competition, I got. I think the first show I ever did, I got third. But again, I was a teenager.
Okay.
So I'm in the teenage class. I think I got third. But then the second competition I did, I got first. And the amazing thing to me was, I mean, I had heard well, this is natural bodybuilding. It's not about how big you are. It's about how balanced and how symmetrical, and how everything kind of fits together,
Right.
And so I show up to the show in the teenage class, and I remember, I'll never forget, there was this kid, he weighed like 175 pounds, and here I am weighing like 136, something like that, 133, and I'm going to get my butt kicked. This kid's definitely gonna, and this guy, Butchie, that was one of these bodybuilder guys that was like, you got to compete. So I show up to compete, and I'm looking, I'm going, I'm going to get smoked. He's like, he looked at me and he said, I'll tell you right now, he goes, if that kid beats you, I'll walk up and I'll flip the winner's table. I mean, the judges table. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I didn't believe it. I'm like, Butchie, don't do that. And so I show up and we compete, and sure enough, I won.
Wow.
And it was like, wow. And so it was like, wow, it's true. It's all about balance. It's all about symmetry. It's all about putting everything together and having the complete package. And I was like, I can really excel at this, is what I thought.
Okay, so basically what you're telling our listeners is, if you're going to go into a show, don't really try to play the size game. The size game can actually work against you, but just work on trying to have...
I'll tell you what, every single show I ever showed up to,
right,
trying to play the size game, I never did as well than going into a show trying to play the ripped game.
Okay. So basically, size is always going to lose out to balance, symmetry, muscularity, and being cut.
What you got to understand, and I think, I think most people, maybe don't know this, or at least beginners don't know this, that when you're on stage, it's an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
You can stand right next to someone, and you can be more symmetrical, you can be more ripped, you can have more balance between your upper body and your lower body, and you could be standing next to somebody that weighs 15 pounds more than you.
Right.
And you can, or in this case, 30 pounds more than you. And in that case, clearly it didn't necessarily look like the guy he wasn't any better. In fact, he was worse because he wasn't as balanced, and he wasn't as symmetrical, and he wasn't as ripped.
Right. Okay, so now as your wins start to accumulate and you start taking more and more first, you start winning your division, eventually you start to win titles of the shows. When you started doing more shows, like what exactly did your goal become? Because I'm sure at first it was, okay, you know what, I'm just going to do a show because Butchie's telling me to do it. Butchie wants to flip over tables, you know what I mean? And then you start winning. Like, what did your goal become then?
Again, back then, with natural bodybuilding, all the magazines that were out on the market, were not natural magazines. They were not physiques of people that were,
quality,
appropriate heights and weights and things like that. And so there was sort of a disjoint between, the dark side, so to speak, and then people that were doing it naturally. And the whole natural thing, has obviously since those days has blown up, and it has become this great industry and has been this great part of society that people can actually work to attain and make it happen. But back then, I never did bodybuilding to ever make it on any magazine covers.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't until I had won the USAs, for the ANBC, that suddenly I realized that Steve Bleckman, who's the owner of Twin Lab and Muscular Development, was in the audience.
Ah.
And so I show up to do the show, and I do well. And and he, was like, oh, we want to do some photos. And at that point, at least in the sort of history of bodybuilding, there had been a couple of, popular bodybuilders that were probably doing things they shouldn't have been doing that were in the press that had actually died due to drug use and diuretic use and things like that. And so there became this whole shift away from that whole way of bodybuilding towards natural bodybuilding.
Right.
And that's when that, sort of, took place. And I, happened to be at the right place at the right time in a small organization, and I was, I worked really hard, to win the USAs. I took 2 years off from, winning Mr. Massachusetts. I came in, I won the junior USAs, and then I took another year.
Okay.
And then I competed and did the USAs, and then I won that. But I never did it because I thought I would get anywhere with it. I did it because I was just so stoked about making myself better, seeing what I could do, physiologically with my own body, and it was like a way of channeling, instead of just exercising for the sake of exercising, I was exercising, with a deliberate intent to, develop muscle tissue and become, create the best physique that I could create.
Right. Okay, now that we're talking about, a lot of how the natural bodybuilding started to progress and move away from the drug bodybuilding. Okay, I actually have in the studio with me an all-natural athlete, and he was actually looking forward to speaking to you when I told him that I'm going to have Mike D'Angelo on the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a good friend of mine, Mr. Dave Fritz. What's up, Dave? How you doing, man?
Pretty good. How you doing?
All right, we're good. Now, listen, I brought you here, because I have Mike D'Angelo, and Mike is telling us about how he got started and staying natural and not playing the size game. And I know that you also want to talk to him. So, Mike, I have Dave here, and Dave's going to just, ask you a couple of questions.
Awesome. Game on.
What's going on, Mike?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. So,
all right. So, basically, what Dave was asking me was like, what would be a typical diet for somebody that's just starting out, and they want to put on some quality muscle tissue. Okay. Now, looking at Dave, all right, he's roughly about 5'7", 5'8", say about 185 pounds, maybe 12% body fat right now. If he wanted to start to like cut up and get ready for a show, say in April, that gives him roughly 7.5 weeks out. What would be like a good starting point for him?
Well, I mean, I would say, I'm all about the science, and so when it comes to, and that's part of why I ended up developing, the software that we did. But when we do your body comp, right, and we find out, okay, well, how much lean mass do you have?
Right.
We can predict, kind of what's your metabolic rate and how many pounds of lean mass do you have, because depending upon how many pounds of lean mass you have, you can then sort of dictate how many grams of protein you should be taking in. So if you're 12%, you weigh 185 pounds, then you probably got 165, or 162 pounds of lean mass.
Okay.
So if you've got 162 pounds of lean mass, if you run out the numbers that you're doing, a typical sort of bodybuilder thing would be taking, 1.3 grams of protein or 1.5 grams of protein per pound of lean mass.
Okay.
So if you've got 163 pounds of lean mass, then again, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but my guess is you ought to be taking in, at least 200 grams of protein.
Right.
You think that much?
And what's that?
You think that much?
Oh, yeah. I mean, how much are you lifting? I mean, if you're lifting to deliberately fatigue tissue, and if your muscles are sore, like constantly, which they should be if you're trying to gain muscle, like if you should have this revolving door of sore muscles all the time. You're doing chest and biceps one day, back and tries another, shoulders and traps and calves another, legs another. So throughout the course of the week, your muscles are constantly sore, and it's revolving all through your body. At that point, if you're training with that kind of intensity, then your body can use that kind of protein to fuel the repair and the recovery of that muscle tissue, because you do not grow muscle in the gym. You grow muscle outside the gym. Your job in the gym is to fatigue that tissue with a deliberate intent to, bring it to a level of failure and whatnot that's going to force the tissue to have to respond. And that response is going to need protein to repair.
Okay.
So that's why I would say you'd need at least that much protein. So I'd start there, and then from there I'd probably, I don't know, throw in somewhere around, 40 grams of fat.
Okay.
45 grams of fat, something like this. I don't have a calculator in front of me, so I can't run the numbers.
Right.
And depending upon how far out you are from doing a show, you're going to want to then take your carbs and sort of tailor them to how quickly you want to lose weight. I mean, if you've got a lot of fat to lose, if you're 12%, you probably don't have that much. You're maybe 8 or 10 pounds away from doing like a show. And so depending upon how many weeks out the show is, you then want to tether your carbs accordingly. So, maybe you could get anywhere. I mean, if you really want to drop your carbs and, get down low, you get 100 grams of carbs. Now where that calorie restriction, where that lines up based on your metabolic rate, that's why you want to kind of look at the science of it. But somewhere in there, when do you think you want to do a show?
I'm looking to compete April 16th.
Oh, so you're gonna do the Fitness Atlantic?
Yeah.
Of course you are. Yeah, baby. That's an awesome. It's such a great show. Brian has done such an awesome job with that show. I mean, when it comes to all the different organizations that are out there that do contests and this and that, no one has more experience than Brian does. And he just puts on a phenomenal show. Is this your first show, or how many shows have you done?
This is my first show.
Oh, my God. Dude, congratulations. That's great. You must be pumped.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Have you been practicing posing?
Yeah, every day. I've been practicing
Awesome.
every day for probably a month now.
That's great. Really good. Where do you live?
I live in Wolcott. It's
Where
in
is that?
Connecticut.
Is that in Connecticut? Gotcha.
Yep.
You ever make it up to Boston?
Not so much.
Yeah, you should try to pop by.
It's a great plug. That's a great plug. I kind of like stuff like that right there. Now, Mike, as we're discussing, Dave competing April 16th at the Fitness Atlantic, which will be held at the Oakdale Theater, you actually competed in that organization, but before it was called Fitness Atlantic, it was called Muscle Mania.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I think you did very well at that, correct?
I did. Yeah, I did. I had won. I think I had won my class. I think in a local Muscle Mania show at the fitness, and then I'd gone out and did the nationals out in L.A.
Nice. Okay, now when we come back from break, because we do got to take a break very, very shortly, I want to talk about how'd you get from being a competitor to actually being guest posing and then emceeing the Muscle Mania show, and then we're going to talk about some exposure. Mike's going to come back with a couple of other questions. So, Mike, I want you to stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, the Body Shop will be right back. We do got to pay some bills, and we'll be back with our guest, Mike D'Angelo. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Body Shop. You are here with your man, your host, Andre Brick Sinclair. On the line, we got a special guest, Mr. Mike D'Angelo. Now, before we went into break, we were talking about where Mike is from, how he got into lifting, how he made the transition from being a wrestler, amateur wrestler, into making it into the sport of bodybuilding, and from bodybuilding, how and what his goals were. Now that we're back with Mike, in the studio with me, I have a good friend of mine, Mr. Dave Fitz, who actually is going to be competing in his first show coming up on April 16th at the Oakdale Theater. So I would like to welcome both Mike and Dave back to the Body Shop.
Hey.
There we go.
What's going on?
All right. So now, Dave, before break, we was just briefly touched on when you used to compete in the Muscle Mania shows, which was being ran by Mr. Brian Canone, who has since changed the name to Fitness Atlantic. Okay, now talk to us briefly about how you competed in that, then made the transition to being the guest poser to actually emceeing the show. Like what was that like?
Well, it was cool. It was I had won the Musclemania thing, and then I had become a sort of Musclemania pro. And once that had happened, Brian had asked me if I would come in and guest pose. And I remember that one of the times I'd come in and guest pose, Skip LaCour was the MC of the Fitness Atlantic. And so I had, I'd gone in and did a guest posing, which was, a ton of fun and totally cool. Like first you're like, just a bodybuilder on stage, and next thing you know, they're asking you to come in and, entertain the crowd for 2-3 minutes. You're not limited to a 90-second routine or anything, so you can just ham it up and be a goofball.
Right.
And so I did that. And then I think the next year, Brian had asked me if I would MC. And I was like, damn, that would be awesome. And, of course, I had never done that, and,
okay.
So he kind of schooled me on how I got to do that and, what my role is and how it works and how you got to move the show, because that's the one thing about Brian's show, which is awesome, is that show moves quick. Everybody gets on, everybody gets a turn, everybody, which is great, but, and it doesn't take all night long, because there's some shows that will go into 12 o'clock at night.
Oh, believe me, And
so you gotta, and because you're the man now, mother.
Well, you know what, man? You left a void when you left, and it needed to be filled by somebody just a little taller, a little bigger. So I just had to step in.
And a little more handsome.
Hey, you know what? Hey, I figured I was just going to be modest, but since you want to mention it, yes, ladies, I am.
And you can come to the show and check me out.
Anytime you want. Y'all know where to find me, right down there at the Oakdale Theater. All right, now, Mike. Okay, so from competing to then guest posing to then eventually emceeing the show, you started getting a lot more exposure. And I know you're a little too modest to mention it, so I'll do it for you. You actually got into MD as well as Muscle Media, and then you started getting endorsement contracts. So walk us through the step of how that actually happened for you.
Well, I mean, it started with winning the USAs for the ANBC. Again, before I ever thought for a second, the thought hadn't even crossed my mind that I'd ever wind up on a magazine cover.
Okay.
And when I'd won the USAs, Steve Blackman was there in the audience, and I remember we ended up, he asked me if I'd shoot back at the Radisson Hotel, and I'm like, oh my God, with Per Bernal of all photographers, right? Like, that guy is like the man.
Yes, he is.
I'm like, oh my God, Per Bernal. I'm like, holy shit, it's crazy, And so I go and we do the shoot. And I'm talking to Steve, and he's there with his wife and the whole thing. And then they're like, we're chatting, and I'm like, oh, I'm going out to the Musclemania out in L.A. And they're like, oh, you are? Oh, great. Well, why don't we just shoot you out there, too? And I'm like, all right, great. And they're like, at the Gold's Gym in Venice. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that place. Oh, yeah, fine.
Yeah, that place, right? That little raggedy gym.
That's like the Mecca, And so that's where it started. And so, I'd done that shoot in Boston, and then like 2-3 weeks later or something, I flew out to LA to compete, and I get a call from Per. Okay, let's go in and we'll shoot, and we shot all day long at the Gold's Gym in Venice, right? And
wow.
Here are these huge bodybuilders.
That's right.
Place is just completely jam crammed with everyone that you'd look at in all the magazines,
mm-hmm.
and they're shooting me, and I'm like, this is great. And so we did a huge shoot. It literally took all day long, and and then I competed and blah blah blah, and then next thing I know, I am walking through an airport, and I see myself on the cover.
On the cover.
On the cover.
So you basically didn't even know that you actually got the cover.
Right.
Okay. Now, see, that seems a little bit hard to believe that, you got these guys, you got some of the best photographers out there talking about, listen, right. Let me use you. I want to take your shots. We're going to send you out to Gold's Gym in Venice, which is the Mecca of bodybuilding. I hope everybody that's listening eventually one day takes a vacation and goes work out there, because the atmosphere is unbelievable.
Place is great.
So there they're doing all of this, and you don't know that you got the cover of a magazine.
I knew that they were going to put me in there because they weren't going to take all these photos and not put me in.
Okay.
But, there was this, shot of me doing like some side sling ab exercise, thing. And it was pretty fierce photo. And it was like, I'm looking at myself, I'm like, that's me? I'm like, oh my God, it was awesome, And then next thing you know, boom, I was on the cover.
So,
and they hadn't called me and said, hey, you're going to be on the cover. It was kind of like, there it is,
Mm-hmm. All right. Because now, a lot of bodybuilders that are just starting out, when they get ready to do a show or they want to compete in their show, their main goal is to make the cover of a magazine, and they believe that once they get the cover, that's it. They're going to take off. You know what I mean? Like, my career is skyrocketing. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be well known. And here is a man on the phone that's telling us that, and you've been on the cover of numerous magazines, by the way, that you didn't even know you made the cover.
Yeah, that one. Not the first one.
Not the okay, not the first one. So
some of the other ones I knew, but that one I didn't, and that was what was so like, oh my God, it was so like I was so awestruck,
mm-hmm.
And then I think it was like three months later, MD had stuck me on a second cover.
Wow.
That was like 3 months later, and then I don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, maybe 8 months later I competed in the Muscle Mania, and then that's when, EAS had approached me.
Wow. So when we talking EAS, now did EAS approach you about getting an endorsement contract or just, possibly promoting their line at a booth? You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
What did EAS approach you about?
Right, so first what they did was it was the art director of the magazine,
okay.
which is what they call the guy that does the photography and all that stuff. They call him the art director. He had approached me at a contest and said, hey, I think I might want to, shoot or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that would be great. And so, I'd gone at the end, we had connected and, I gave my number about this and that. And then I had gone home
mm-hmm.
and, back to Boston. And then I had got a call, I don't know, a couple of weeks later or whatnot. And they were like, hey, we'd like to send you out and, we want to do a shoot. I'm like, that'll be awesome, So they give you a couple of weeks lead time so that, one, they can book the trip and all that, but also so that you can stay on your diet and stay lean because they want you to, show up ripped and obviously in shape,
Right.
So, I went out there and we shot for 2 days just doing various shots. I wasn't sure exactly what. Now that I think about it, the first show, the first couple of shots that I had taken were for an article about men losing their hair. Right? Now, fortunately, right, I haven't lost my hair yet. But the article, right, this is funny. The article was called Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow. Right? So it's all about, and so they wanted to, stick, long, dreadlocky, hair extensions in my hair, like I'm looking like Fabio, right? And I'm looking at the guy, and I'm like, you're not serious, right? He's like, yeah. I go, but that's not me, And he looks at me and he goes, it's not about you.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my God, So I suck it up. I take it for the team. I do the shoot. It came out great. We took a bunch of other photos,
Uh-huh.
and then at the end of that 4-day trip, I think. Cal had basically offered me a contract.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Man, you're one of the luckiest guys that I know.
I have to say I really feel, blessed, and I do feel lucky because I know that does not happen all the time.
Right.
But yeah, that's how it rolled out.
So, Mike, I have a question.
Yeah, hit me.
I heard a couple people's opinions on cutting carbs out of your diet, but everyone's telling me for right now I shouldn't eat carbs at night and I should stick to what I've been doing, trying to match my body weight and protein. So I never heard of taking 200 grams compared to my 162 or 165, but
Sure.
They're saying that I have to cut carbs totally for 2 weeks before the show.
Yeah, that would be called a depletion. So you'd be depleting your. Well, I guess what's your question first?
Well, I'm just asking you, what you think would what you would personally do, because I've never done this before, and I'm listening to everyone's opinion. But am I going to listen to someone that really doesn't know, or am I going to listen to the best? You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. That was good.
Yeah, that was kind of good.
I like you even more now. Okay, so basically the way that the carb thing works, right, when you look at it from a scientific standpoint, and I always refer back to that, is that your body is always going to burn a carbohydrate before it burns anything else, right? So, and the options that your body has is carbohydrates, it can burn fat, or it can burn muscle tissue as a source of energy, right? Mm-hmm. So the first thing your body's going to go to is it's always going to burn a carbohydrate first, because it's like jet fuel. It's like quick, easy to burn, and it'll burn almost immediately, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea is that if you cut your carbohydrates, your body no longer has the ability to burn those carbohydrates as a source of energy.
Okay, so then it's resorting to fat?
It's either going to resort to fat or protein, because those are the two other options. So then what you do is you jack up your protein intake, and you constantly stimulate your muscle tissue so that your muscle tissues are craving that protein. Your muscle tissues need that protein, and by stimulating all that muscle tissue over the course of a week while you keep your calories low and your carbohydrates out, your body is forced to not burn muscle tissue as a source of energy. So it's not going to burn protein as a source of energy. So now your body has nothing left to turn to but fat. But if you want your body to burn fat, you've got to eat some quality form of fat also. So you have to have like olive oil or avocados or almonds. Like, you've got to get in some fat, not a lot, but you've got to let your body know that you're taking in the quality fat. And then it almost puts your body fat in a you ever play chess?
Yeah.
And when you are going to take over the king, in order to take the king, you have to put the king in checkmate.
Okay.
Which means you've got it from this angle, you've got it from that angle, and the king can't go anywhere. So you got to think of your fat as, the king. So you're putting the fat in checkmate by dropping your carbohydrates so your body doesn't have carbs to burn. Mm-hmm. And then you're increasing your protein and constantly stimulating your muscle tissue through weight training and posing. So now your body's not going to burn protein or muscle tissue, and your body has no other choice but to burn fat. And that's how you get lean and ripped.
Okay, so that's making sense. But where would you draw the line between burning muscle and burning fat? Like, how long should a training session be?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question. So,
all right. Well,
say that one more time.
I think what he's asking is that, as you say that you want to have your body going through like the process of where you're putting the body fat in check, okay, and you got to eat quality foods as well as have a little bit of fat. When you're doing that, in order for you to stimulate the muscle fibers and put on quality muscle tissue, when you're training, how long should a typical training session be?
I'll tell you right now, I won the USAs and all the contests that I had done, well at, or in fact through my entire history of bodybuilding, all the contests that I did, I never spent more than 5-6 hours a week in the gym.
Okay, now when you say 5 or 6 hours, okay?
A week. Meaning maybe an hour a day.
Okay. Now
I am in there. I am hitting it hard. Mm-hmm. I am crushing that tissue, whatever muscle tissue I'm choosing to train that day, and I am in and out of there.
Okay.
Boom. 45 minutes, an hour. And the idea is, the concept of when you go to the gym, your whole thought process should be based upon how deliberately and how intentionally can I fatigue this muscle tissue, and I will know that I'm successful at it if I'm sore the next day.
If you are sore the next day, then you know you've actually crushed that muscle tissue, got yourself correct. Okay, now your body's going into a fat-burning process. It's no longer storing fat. Your protein tissue and your protein intake is nice and high. Mike, when we get back, from break, okay, we're going to talk about the personal training aspect of your business because you're giving away some great information, all right? So, Mike, I want you to stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, The Body Shop will be right back on FTNS Radio right after we pay these bills. Yeah. Welcome back to The Body Shop. I am still your host, Andre Brick St. Clair. On the line, my guest, Mr. Mike D'Angelo. Now, before we went to break, we touched on you emceeing at the shows, how you got into muscle media, eventually getting into MD, and then, you know, you was actually handed an endorsement contract. So now, Mike, from you doing all of those things, you actually took that and brought and started marketing yourself. You took it one step further. You wasn't waiting on these people to chase you. You actually started your own personal training business, which we will get into. But what I want you to explain to our guests here at The Body Shop is how did you, or when did you realize that, you know what, maybe I can make some money at this and eventually get into personal training?
I started personal training before I had graduated from college. So through this whole process of competing and all that, you know, that is where, you know, at the very beginning, that's where I really found my love for, you know, working out and taking care of myself and feeling like absolutely amazing all the time. And I'm like, everybody should feel like this, you know? And so I had gone to school for exercise physiology, and I had got a job. I got a clinical application in exercise phys from BU Medical, and I was there. I had got a job, you know, doing cardiac rehab and stress therapy and all that, and I thought that was going to be a really great job, and I was like 21 years old, and this is like I'm going to help people and the whole thing. And I started, you know, doing it. I started working, and I realized, you know, I'm on the wrong side of healthcare.
Okay.
I'm working in the medical, you know, side of things, and I ought to be working on the preventative side of things.
Preventative side.
Right. And so that's how I chose, you know what, I'm going to start doing personal training. You know, and I started doing the training thing. You know, I'd have clients in the morning. I'd have clients at night before and after my day job shift. And by the time I was 21, it took about a year, I'm like, I'm just going to be a personal trainer full time. And that is what I've always done. I've been doing the training thing for 20 years now, almost. And I love it. I still love it.
Okay, so now, with you being a personal trainer, what was the first certification that you went after? Because a lot of beginners or a lot of people that work out and they have their buddies coming up to them like, hey, listen, can you train me for a show? Can you train me for this? Can you train me for that? And they're really not certified. So they're walking around and they're calling themselves a personal trainer, but you're actually a certified trainer.
Yeah, I mean, I think above and beyond the certification, I mean, if you've got a degree in exercise physiology, then you cover pretty much what's going to be covered in any personal training certification course.
Okay.
So I had got my degree in exercise phys. Then I had at that time, you know, I'd gotten certified through the American College of Sports Medicine and got their advanced trainer certification, you know, and started doing the training thing. And since that time, you know, there's been all kinds of organizations that have popped up that give, you know, fairly competent, you know, personal training certifications. But I'll tell you right now, there is nothing that has helped my career as a personal trainer more than my own experience at working out and walking the walk and talking the talk.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, you know,
No question.
I've been certified through NASM and through ISSA and all that stuff, and they give me a lot of like textbooks, you know, a lot of textbook type of stuff to apply, whether it's, you know, I'm sorry?
I said that, and that stuff is all good to know.
Exactly.
You know that stuff too.
Right.
You know, but again, nothing communicates better than, you know, when you're speaking to some client and you're a personal trainer, nothing speaks to that client more than speaking from your heart and speaking from where you've been and wanting to help them get to wherever they want to be. And so when it comes to how are you going to help them most? You're going to be helping them by just talking to them as real people based on, where they're at in your own experiences. When you're talking from that standpoint, you are talking from your, almost like your soul.
Right.
And that's how you can have impact, because that, speaking from there, makes people change their behavior, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so now when you're giving a lecture or you're talking to your clients and you're basically no longer reciting the stuff you learned at school, you're no longer reciting the textbook type of, RTS training, which is, resistance strength training. You're not saying, okay, if you move your arm at a 33-degree angle, you're going to hit this part of the head, that part of the head. Eventually, that led you to creating your own software, which is called Body Evolver, correct?
Right, yeah.
Okay, I want you to talk about that for a minute. I want you to talk about how you went about creating your own software and marketing that.
Well, the whole software creation thing started, 20 years ago when I was doing my bodybuilding. Because I was all into following the science.
Mm-hmm.
And there were no programs out there that were doing it for me. So I just started doing everything on paper. So I would get my body comp done. I'd find out my metabolic rate. I'd follow the numbers based on metabolic rate and calories in and calories out and all this stuff. And that is what eventually led to this sort of process that I've always done with my clients, which is, okay, I got some new client. All right, come on in. Let's see where you're at. Let's get baseline readings on where you're at. Let's find out where you've been, so we have a little bit of history, and find out where you want to go. And based on the baseline readings we collect today, we are going to follow the science, and we're going to just follow the dots. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, based on your metabolic rate, based on your specific, metrics, and it's like presto. It's like magic. It works. And so that's how, we started building the software. So, I had, I was fortunate that, about 6 years ago, a client walked in the gym, wanted to work out. He happened to be a software engineer and a database guru for IBM. And I started doing this, system on him, and he's like, you know what? We could automate this whole system, and we could stick it online. And then, it would, one, help me manage my clients better,
mm-hmm.
which is, it was the original application was, how am I going to track all my clients' results over time? How can I show, hey, you've gained 3 pounds of muscle or 6 pounds of muscle, you've lost this many pounds of fat, you've lost this many pounds of inches. So it's all about measure, track, and plan using science. And so, that was 6 years ago. And so we developed this whole thing online, and we've turned it into this subscription-based software model that, personal trainers can use to measure, track, plan, and manage their clientele.
Okay, so now that you met the software guy, once again, you're one of the most blessed individuals I know, and where things just happen to fall into your lap. And I don't mean that as a slight, though, because
no, not at all.
The listeners may not know that me and you, we have a personal type of relationship where we joke back and forth. So, but now with the progression and the goals that your clients have approached you with, okay, I want you to please, in your own words, I want you to explain to people why, if they're going to go after a personal trainer, the personal trainer should, at the very least, be in shape. I mean, I've been at the gym where other personal trainers have been walking around and, it almost looks like they got a basketball under their shirt and they're saying they're off season and they're wondering why they don't have any clients. Like, please tell them why it's so important for you to stay and maintain in the shape that you're in.
I mean, it's just really, it boils down to credibility.
Okay.
If somebody is not practicing what they preach and it's obvious that they're not in shape, it's hard to be taken seriously. And so if you are in shape, like there are some people that can be in really great shape, but they've, their personalities are such that they think it's all about them, and it's not all about them. It's all about the client.
Right.
It's like, where's that client at? How can I help? If you want to be a successful personal trainer, then you want to stick your heart out and you want to help as much as you can. And when other people in the gym see you training someone with that perspective, where you are there to serve, you are there to help, and you are having a profound impact on that client's life, and then suddenly that client starts going through this amazing transformational process, boom, there's all your referrals.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
I mean, and that's just the way the universe works. It's inescapable.
Right. Okay, now, Mike, I want to get your opinion on a couple of things, and I'm also going to throw some scenarios at you. Okay?
All right.
So this is going to be like a rapid fire section.
Oh, boy.
Here we go. Here we go.
I'm trying to stay off my TikTok.
Okay. First and foremost, all right, being a bodybuilder, then going into the personal training aspects, and now, creating your own software, okay? There is a commercial that is on TV that, where a certain gym, which name I will not mention, is poking fun of bodybuilders. And they got one guy walking through the gym with a gallon of water, a flannel shirt. I pick things up, I put them down. How does that make you feel?
I know that's not me.
Okay.
For one, I think that there's a stereotype out there. I'm not so sure that stereotype's based in reality.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a marketing ploy, and I think that a lot of people will eat it up, and I think that it will work for that company that stuck that ad out there.
Okay. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to have a one-on-one session with you, right? And I want you to just come off the top of your head, okay? So
right.
I'm going to throw some scenarios at you because our listeners are definitely going to want to understand this, okay? So
okay, cool.
Here we go. All right. I'm approaching you in the gym, right?
Yep.
Hey, listen, I need a trainer. How much do you charge?
$125 an hour.
Okay. Why should I pay you that $125 an hour?
Well, I've got a proven track record for success with, personal training. I've been at this a long time, and I believe that I'm well worth it.
Okay. Well, the other trainer, at the other gym, he's only charging like $45 a session.
That's totally cool, man, and he could be really great.
Okay. All right. Well, check it out. I'll pay you your rate, but all I want to do right now is just lose my stomach. I don't want to lose my arms. I don't want to lose my back. I just want to lose my stomach so I can look good.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Nah.
Game on, brother.
Now, the reason I say that is because I've been approached, I'm sure you've been approached, and you've heard people come up and say this, like, okay, listen, I want to get in shape, but I just want to lose my stomach. And they forget that you cannot do spot reducing, like fat.
I wouldn't even, you know what, on a rapid fire questionnaire like that, I wouldn't even go there. I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, all right, I'll tell you that later. You can't spot reduce fat, and,
Okay.
But anyway, but yeah, that is true.
All right. So, Mike, what's your website?
Bodyevolver.com.
All right. Now, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, and let's say they don't have access to a computer, is there a number where they can call you?
Well, there is. Although I will say that as many years as I've had the website up online, everyone just shoots me an email.
Okay.
But the number, get this, the number is 617-24/7-BODY.
Wow. Say that again, because somebody's going to write that down, and I want to make sure, that they know exactly where to go. Say that again for me.
It's 617-24/7-BODY.
24/7-BODY. Ladies and gentlemen.
The problem with BODY is that when we got that phone number, 8 years ago or something like that, they had cell phones that you'd have to do A, B, C. It's not that applicable with an iPhone anymore. So the real number is 24/7-2639.
24/7-2639. All right, there you go. Mike D'Angelo, man, thank you for calling into the Body Shop. It was a great interview. I'd like to thank my in-studio guest, Mr. Dave Fitz. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a nice round of applause. The Body Evolver owns. Hey, Mike, I got a question for you. Am I going to see you April 16th?
Oh, my God, are you kidding me? I'm going to be there. I'm doing body fats on everyone, so you better show up.
No, you don't got to worry about me, man. I'm retired from bodybuilding, you know what I mean? But for anybody out there that wants to come down and see the man in person, Mr. Mike D'Angelo will be at the Oakdale Theater April 16th. at the Fitness Atlantic Championships.
It's going to be a great show. I'm looking forward to it, and it's always a fun time and such an amazing experience.
All right, well, Mike, thank you for your time here at the Body Shop, man, and we really appreciate it.
All right, thanks so much.
All right. So, Dave, now that you've actually spoken to the man, okay, I know you've been through some experiences yourself, and being that you're going to compete for the first time, all right, how profound was some of the information that Mike gave you?
It's very important because I was really not sure what I was supposed to do with my diet, and now that I have that information, I'm going to try to apply it as much as I could because I don't train to be second best. I don't think anyone does. So, just kick it into action. I don't know.
All right. So now, how long have you actually been training now?
It's hard to say because I started training when I was like 15.
Okay.
But then I got in a pretty bad car accident when I was 19, and I was paralyzed for a while. So I didn't actually start training again until I was probably 23.
Okay, hold on. You got into a bad accident, and you was paralyzed.
Yeah.
And now you're about to compete in your first show. Okay. We're going to talk more about that in another show, okay? So I'm going to actually invite you back, okay? And I want you to just let everybody know what your story really is, okay? So we're going to bring you back to that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for letting the Body Shop into your airways right here on FTNS Radio. Now, remember, the best of the best always listen to FTNS. You're listening to The Body Shop. I am your host, Andre Brick St. Clair. I see you when I see you.